Being Kanye West is a billionaire's dream, but it still sucks. Most people think he's living the ultimate life billionaire, genius, icon. But the truth? That dream is a trap. Fame breaks people, but Kanye, he looked fame in the eye, married it, divorced it, then tried to outdress it at Paris Fashion Week. Then asked the mirror if it had any notes. This isn't just a celebrity. This is what happens when talent, ego, and Wi-Fi collide at the speed of light. This is the guy who used to walk around with a Louis Vuitton backpack full of porn DVDs because apparently that sparked his creativity. That's real. You're not watching a rapper. You're watching a one-man universe where every thought is a headline and every silence feels like a Yeezy-branded storm brewing. And no, this isn't just hot takes. This breakdown is built on real moments, quotes, meltdowns, and media mayhem. So today, we're breaking down why being Kanye isn't just hard. It's a full-blown meltdown in slow motion. From the rise to the unraveling to the wreckage, we're diving headfirst into the chaos. And when the noise gets too loud, he doesn't fade out, he renames himself. You've reinvented yourself so many times, you needed a new name just to keep up. Yee. As if that would simplify anything. Just Yee. One syllable. No filter. Call it rebirth, call it branding, call it whatever, but deep down, even if you call yourself Yee, the world still sees you as Kanye. But the higher the Yeezy, the harder the crash. And trust me, Kanye built his empire on a trampoline. And the world only ever asks the same tired question. Genius or menace? Messiah or meltdown? Visionary or villain? There is no in-between, and that's exactly why it sucks to be Kanye West. You're not just famous, you're infamous. You don't just trend, you detonate. A cultural hazard wrapped in Balenciaga and controversy. You're not a celebrity, you're an event. You walk into a room and suddenly everyone needs to know what you're wearing, who you're dating, and what's flying out of your mouth next. You're a one-man headline machine, spitting out more stories than an entire newsroom. But it's not all sparkles and red carpets. No, when you're Kanye, there's always a double-edged sword in the mix, one that slices both ways. Every genius move is shadowed by chaos. One minute, you are a revolutionary artist. The next, you are the crazy guy yelling at clouds. And somehow the clouds are clapping back on Twitter. It all started with the music. And let's be real, when you were in the booth, you were untouchable. The beats? Iconic. The bars? They hit like a freight train straight from your chest. The bravado? Oh, it was a sport. And not just any sport. The kind you'd probably win gold in if there were awards for unshakable confidence. That's not confidence. That's a spiritual out-of-body experience. He once told the world his biggest regret was not being able to watch himself perform live. That's not a punchline. That's a real quote. You didn't just make music, you made it an event. You flipped soul samples into sermons and had people rethinking music, life, and maybe their entire playlists. You turned heartbreak into art and struggle into style, redefining how music could speak to people. Albums like The College Dropout, Late Registration, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy weren't just albums, they were cultural reset buttons. Every note felt like a sonic rebirth. You didn't just ride waves, you made waves. And not just any waves, tsunamis. You were the blueprint, the architect, the guy who created the soundscape that would dominate hip-hop and, well, the music world in general for the next 2 decades. You were the renaissance man of hip-hop, rocking shutter shades, the self-appointed leader of the revolution. And for a while, everyone was following your lead. But for every platinum hit, there was a platinum-level meltdown waiting backstage. You're a ringmaster here. If this ride's got you spinning, tap that like button before Yee drops another rant and shuts down the internet. Now back to Yee. Every time you hit that creative peak, you nosedived just as hard in the public eye. With every groundbreaking album that redefined culture, there came a headline that bombed your entire image into oblivion. You couldn't release a masterpiece without unleashing a scandal right alongside it. The public was like, is this guy okay? Should we be vibing to this track or do we need an emergency intervention? It was like every genius move you made came with an asterisk, and the media, being the thirsty creature it is, kept flipping back to read the fine print. You were trying to paint a masterpiece on a sonic canvas, but the world was too busy staring at the flames you were setting yourself on fire with in the group chat. The problem is, you didn't just make music, you made statements. And not the kind that were just, oh, that was cool. Nah, you made statements that either changed the game or made people feel like they were experiencing a cultural meltdown. Sometimes those statements were iconic, like when you stormed the VMAs and interrupted Taylor Swift's moment, turning it into a moment of pure internet trauma. You didn't just think Beyoncé had the best video of all time, you didn't whisper it, you shouted it. Right there in front of the world, while Taylor was still standing there in her sparkly dress, shocked as all hell. This man turned a pop song acceptance speech into a global hostage situation. You didn't just make a point, you made a statement that turned the entire music world upside down. And just like that, the world pivoted. You went from musical genius to public menace, a pivot the world couldn't stop watching. The memes? They came flooding in like a tidal wave. The tweets? Oh, they were flying in faster than your album drops. You weren't trending, you were time traveling through timelines. The Kanye conversation used to be about brilliance. Now it's about breakdowns. Genius faded, chaos took center stage. If your discography had a genre, it'd be chaos core. Every track, a crisis in disguise. You kept moving though, album after album, rebrand after rebrand. Yeezus was you in full Messiah complex mode. The life of Pablo was basically a live-streamed mental breakdown with an 80s soundtrack. Yee was a vulnerability repackaged as therapy core. And Donda was a gospel-fueled marathon of chaos, grief, and merch. You tried to process your mother's death in public. You tried to find God, lose ego, win fans, fire managers, and maybe cancel Drake all at once. It was art. It was weird. It was brilliant. It was exhausting. And yet, people still listened, because no matter how many times you short-circuited, people couldn't look away. You had the kind of magnetism that made everyone feel like they were witnessing either history or a disaster, sometimes both. You could sell sneakers that looked like alien croissants and still make $1 billion. You could tweet gibberish at 3 a.m. and still have Harvard professors calling it postmodern brilliance. But let's not pretend like you didn't pay the price. Oh, you paid it all right. Every time you opened your mouth to say something, you could either be wild or real, depending on who you ask. The backlash didn't just show up, it hit like a freight train loaded with bad decisions. Your political detours? Well, let's say they were wild in all the wrong ways. Wearing a MAGA hat? Oh, that was less of a statement and more of a career suicide note written in real time. You wore the hat, Kanye, and somehow still expected brunch invites. You basically handed the media a front row seat to your downfall while they munched on popcorn and tweeted about it. Announcing a presidential run? Audacious. Confusing. Iconic? Possibly. Let's not forget the 2020 campaign rally where Yee wore a bulletproof vest and cried on stage while revealing he almost aborted his daughter. This wasn't a metaphor. This was Kanye, live and unfiltered. But when the dust settled, it left everyone scrambling to figure out if they were still watching a cultural revolution or if they just entered an alternate dimension where chaos was somehow the new normal. And then came the anti-Semitic remarks, the rants, the interviews that no one could sit through without feeling like they had to pause, walk away, and scream into a pillow to reclaim their sanity. Even when InfoWars says, that's a bit much, you've officially left the simulation. One moment you were Kanye West, the musical icon. The next, you were a walking HR liability, a headline machine that nobody could shut off. Sponsors? They ran faster than a toddler with a sugar high. Friends? They ghosted like they were on the set of a horror movie. Even Adidas stood by Jeremy Scott's teddy bear sneakers, but even they said, nah, when Kanye started spiraling. They dropped Yee faster than a hot potato with a viral video attached to it. Suddenly, you went from everyone's favorite genius to the person no one wanted to be seen with in public. It was a full-on freefall. And then there's your love life, which, let's be real, could have been its own reality TV show. It was a full-on soap opera wrapped in paparazzi lenses and a constant stream of sources close to the couple gossip. Your marriage to Kim Kardashian? Oh, that was a match made in tabloid heaven, but personal hell. It was like the internet couldn't decide whether to root for you or to be in a state of collective concern. And when it ended, well, it was like watching a slow-motion car crash where everyone involved was yelling over who got the kids and who got to keep the Met Gala invites. It was a mess, but in the best way possible, like a reality TV finale that everyone had been waiting for. You posted, deleted, and posted again because apparently Instagram was your emotional diary. At this point, your feed had more plot twists than Game of Thrones, except people actually watched till the end. The group chat, it was not okay. People didn't know if they should send you sympathy memes or just throw their phones out the window. All through this, people kept asking the same question: is Kanye okay? Because here's the dark side of being Yee. When you open up about your bipolar disorder, you hope for empathy. And now, even Bianca Censori seems to be blinking SOS through sheer spandex. One week, she's wrapped in a sofa cushion in Italy, and the next, she's wearing a sock and a prayer. It's giving high fashion hostage vibes, and somehow you're still calling it visionary. At this point, she's less wife and more walking art installation on tour. She went from Yeezy muse to main character in a 24/7 style fever dream. The girl can't even grab a smoothie without breaking the algorithm. Kanye, you didn't just reinvent yourself, you dragged your wife into a lookbook of existential crisis. You became a mental health infographic in the morning and a punchline by noon. You tried to tell your story, but the internet just turns it into content. You're honest about your demons, but honesty has a price. And yours came with hashtags and suspension notices. Kanye didn't just overshare, he turned oversharing into performance art. Even when you're trying to reinvent, to do something new, the world insists on dragging the old Kanye into the room. You're trying to move forward. They're still talking about Taylor Swift. You're trying to sell a fashion line. You're evolving. They're still quoting your old tweets. You're trying to have a Super Bowl moment. The NFL would rather book a hologram of Prince. You're stuck in the remix of your worst moments, and the world keeps pressing replay. That's the problem with being a cultural icon who's also human. The world doesn't let you grow. They want your hits, your pain, your controversy, and they want it all without the messiness of you being a person. You're no longer just Kanye. You're a symbol, and symbols don't get to make mistakes. You were once the guy who said, "I am Warhol. I am the #1 most impactful artist of our generation." And maybe you were right. But now you're the guy trying to fight your way back from being reduced to a headline. You still want to change the world, but the world keeps changing the way it looks at you. So yeah, even as a billionaire, it still sucks to be Kanye West. Because no matter how many lives you live, names you change, or records you break, you can't escape the court of public opinion. And in that courtroom, you're always on trial. Always. Even when you're silent, you're too quiet. When you're loud, you're too much. When you're brilliant, they call it luck. When you stumble, it's proof you were never great to begin with. You gave them genius, and they gave you trending topics. You wanted peace and got paparazzi. And worst of all, you still believe you're not done yet. But damn, does it suck to be Kanye West. So now smash subscribe and plunge straight into our next chaos act. Why being Beyonce might suck even more.